And we are live with today's 220-1102 Core 2 A Plus study group. This is our pre-show. Got about 10 minutes before we get started. You can see the big clock here, counting down the time until we get things going. This is the time where I have to check everything in the studio, make sure our video is configured and set up the way I would hope it would be. Everything looks pretty good there. I'm looking over at recordings, which are going. I can see the Cylons going in the bottom right there. And of course, got to check on the YouTube connection, which currently is looking just fine. Hello, chat room. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We'll be getting started with the main part of the study group in about 9 minutes. There we go. So this will be our last Core 2 study group of the calendar year. You believe that? It just has flown by. It just went by so fast. And here we are at the end of the year already. I can't even understand what happened, but here we are. And it has been a year. It's one of those where you look back and think, there's a lot of stuff that's happened this year. And indeed, for us anyway, a lot has happened this year. We got a lot going on. So next year should be just amazing. With all of this happening, we're sort of leading up to something. I don't know what that something is yet, but we're leading up to it. You can sort of see it as it's happening. So this is a good time of the year to kind of just look back, figure out what you want to do, and then move forward. Hope everybody's doing well in the chat room. Thanks for being here. Thanks for checking in. Good to have you here. If you want to make sure that you can connect and answer questions today, you can use the URL that's on your screen. Go to ProfessorMesser.com. It's right there behind me. ProfessorMesser.com/QA is the full URL. ProfessorMesser.com/QA. The QA, I don't know what that stands for. It stands for something. And that is where you can go to answer these questions that you see. And the question that's up, really not a question right now. It's just a map of the world, and you can put your virtual pin cushion is what we have here, and you can put your virtual pin anywhere in this view. I'll zoom up a little bit. Maybe we can get a little granularity. Some folks are checking in. Some folks way up in Canada. Some folks in the Northeast. It's got some Midwest folks checking in. Anybody international yet? They'll get here. We're just getting started. Don't worry. Everybody will be here. We got a lot to go through. All the questions today will be all brand new questions from the 220-1102. There will also be different things. We'll, of course, in the second hour, open up the chat and the Q&A. In fact, you'll see if you go to that same URL, ProfessorMesser.com/QA, you'll see a tab at the top, and you can submit a question for the second hour at any time. So if there's a question you have that you would like me to answer, that's where you can submit that for our consideration. I guess is a nice way to say that. I can't go through every question we get, and some of the questions you send are probably things I should not be talking about. But most of the questions we get are quite good, and thank you for submitting them. We'll go through those in the second hour. The first hour, I ask you the questions, and we're going to use the same URL for that one as well. So it's a good place to go for asking questions. A number of you are even putting questions in the chat room right now. What about this? What about that? What about the other thing? You should submit those. Use the link right there, ProfessorMesser.com/QA, to submit your question. Right down here. That right there. This should be a pretty good live stream for you Core 2 folks. I've got a smattering of questions from the different areas, so we will figure it out. We'll go down the list. Let's put this phone away. Who needs that? Get rid of that. I wonder if I have a USB here somewhere I could use to plug in and charge up while we're just sitting here. I don't think I need to, but never hurts. We'll get that going. We got about 5 minutes to go before we get started, so feel free to settle in. Some more good questions coming in the chat room. Remember, if you'd like to submit your questions, you can always go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA. Use those tabs across the top to select the questions that you can submit for the second hour. And I will be glad to have a look at those questions. I go through all of them once we're there. The ones that show up fast, the ones that show up quickly, are the ones that are important. Now, the real question is, I'm not even sure I lined up to do the things I needed to do on this side. We're going to very quickly send out a little email blast. Or I need to make sure I sent that one. I'm not sure. I think I queued one up. Maybe I didn't now that I'm thinking about it. So we will queue one up very, very quickly. And I didn't. So let's get a notification out to folks. Let them know that we have things going on. Can you tell my day's been a little chaotic? Not a problem. Do not worry. This takes 2 seconds to do. This is why we do a pre-show, by the way. This is exactly why we do a pre-show. We're going to copy that one. We'll start that right now. We'll go to our drafts. We'll click this thing. We will have a look at it. Let's schedule it. Send it immediately. That sounds good. Send it now. Yep, send it. So that's one. That makes it easy. And I'm going to do another one. You can't see it on your side. I'm sort of talking through it because I don't want you to see the chaos that I surround myself with when I'm working on this. We'll do a new post and let everybody know that it's time for our Core 2 A+ study group. And you can join the live stream. This is why we do a pre-show right here, for no other reason than to fix my problems. Join the live stream here, and we'll put the link that you are on right now. And customize and share it now. Why not? And there it goes. So that makes sure that everybody knows that we are live and everybody can join, which is kind of fun. Always nice to have folks joining us in here. All right, that goes away. This goes away. All of that goes away, and we will go back to that view. There we go. See, it's that easy. Oh, lots going on here with things that we need to work through. There is in fact plenty of Q&A. All the questions that we have in our study group are obviously new. These will be things you've not seen before, except for the very first one. The very first one, we always do a replay. So we'll go do something fun with that too. I'll get started here in about a minute, 2 minutes, 2 minutes, 15 seconds. Get things going. Get a beverage going. We'll get our preview set up. We'll check our cameras. My laptop keeps going away. That's because I don't have it set up to show the right things on the screen. That's a little bit better. Hey, Malk made it. Thanks for being here, Malk. Good to see you again. Thanks for joining us. Hope things are well with you. The idea of doing these live streams is just so we can have some Q&A, so we can have a conversation back and forth. Most of what we do in this first hour is me asking you questions. But the second hour, we really get into some interesting topics because you get to submit what you would like us to talk about, which is kind of fun. So it might be about certifications. It might be about technology. It might be about anything. And then we can step through those things. Sometimes people want to know, what's that thing on your desk? Or what is it that what are you planning next? Or, those types of things come up too. We can always discuss those. Most of the topics and comments for the second hour focus generally around technology and certifications, but it doesn't have to. So you get to decide that. We got about a minute to go, less than, which is the perfect time to have a little coughing fit if you've ever been working on this. Me. Okay. We are in really good shape here. 30 seconds to go here. We got this. I could probably put this into a mode for Keynote. There we go. We're going to get a green light. Yes, we got one. I like the green light. There it is. That's very nice. All we have to do now is get to the top of the hour, which is approaching very quickly here. I really need one more clock up here, don't I? I need one more thing to put on the list. There it is, top of the hour. I think that's a good place to go. Let's get things started, shall we? Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the December 2024 Professor Messer 220-1102 Core 2 A+ study group. This is the study group where I ask you questions that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives, and we all get to participate online. If you are here live, we'll see how well you know some of these objectives. We have a lot to go through today. If you are joining us live, we would love it if you were able to hop over to our Q&A. This is where you can not only answer the questions that I ask, but you can also get questions submitted for our second hour, which is what we call our after show, which is really just an extension of what we've done here. If you would like to do that and participate, you would follow the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA, a great place to go to answer questions. That is also a good place where you can see if it's working properly. I always have a question set up prior to this event so that we can hop in and see how it's working. This question happens to be a question from our previous study group. And this next question that we have will step through. In fact, I don't think I have the question on the screen here. So we're just going to hop over to the view that I have that asks, a network administrator has configured UPnP. Which of the following would be associated with this change? Would it be authentication required for network access, static IP address assignments, filtering of inappropriate content, server access from external clients, or visibility of wireless network names? Our standing rule, for those of you who may not have been here before, is that we do not answer these questions in the chat room. Instead, we answer the questions here. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. Make sure you have a look at what that particular question might present to you. And we're going to come back to this question in just a bit. There's plenty of things to step through that we will be talking about today. Sometime during this first hour, I will endeavor to give you a instructions and notification of how you can earn a 1-hour webinar category CEU. If you don't know what a CEU is, then this probably does not apply to you. But if you already have a certification or you need continuing education units, perhaps for anything else, you might be able to get them in this first hour. Just keep an ear out for that. We will come back to those in just a bit. We're going to talk today about the A+ exam. The A+ exam really consists of two different exams to earn your A+ certification, the 1101 and the 1102. That's the version numbers of the current versions of the exams. These exams were released on April the 20th of 2022, and we expect that they will retire somewhere around the end of this year, or really not this year, end of next year. I'm already thinking 2025. So you've got about a year before these exams go away. This is great news for all of us, of course, that are currently studying, because we never want an exam to suddenly disappear while we're in the middle of trying to study and get both of these taken. And in this case, you have plenty of time if you are studying. If you're studying anything that says the 220-1101 or the 220-1102, you have the right study materials, and those will be the study materials you'll be asked about on the exam itself. The exam requirements are that each exam is 90 minutes in length, and you may get a maximum of 90 questions on the exam. There is also a scale between 100 and 900, where you have to get at least a 700 on that scale to pass your 1102 exam. Now, even though we expect this exam series to retire at the end of 2025, if you pass your both of these exams today, you are certified for 3 years. So as I like to say, once you're certified, it really doesn't matter what they do to the exams. They could change the exams every day. But because you are certified, you don't have to worry about that really ever again, because you can simply renew your certification every 3 years. It's unlikely you'll ever take these exams again once you pass them the first time. If you'd like to know more about what's expected on these exams, make sure you grab the objectives. They are available from a link on my site. You can go to professormesser.com/objectives. We're going to focus on the Core 2 today. The Core 2 consists of different domains. Those domain categories are operating systems, security, software troubleshooting, and operational procedures. So there are numerous topics to go through, plenty that we will need to know for this exam. And hopefully you've memorized quite a bit of that material already, because I will try to cover all of those different domains in this live stream today. I don't think we'll have a problem doing that. We do have a video replay of this event immediately available right after we're finished. It's on our YouTube channel. But I also create a podcast audio only download version, so you can listen in the car, listen when you're traveling, listen when you're working out. You can visit professormesser.com/podcast to find the links that you need to add this to your favorite podcast listening program. If you'd like to instead use a streaming audio service, simply search for Professor Messer on that streaming service. So if you're on Spotify, look for Professor Messer on Spotify. That same podcast link is available on those services as well. I mentioned that you'll be able to go to YouTube and see the replay immediately afterwards. And about a day after this live event, you'll notice that the YouTube video description has a number of chapter configurations here. The timestamps are available so that you can jump exactly to where you would like to go if you happen to be on the desktop version of YouTube. These are not automatic. There's nothing magical about that. It's hard work that's put in by my marketing manager, Lori, who's watching this replay. Hi, Lori. She's going through and listening to this whole thing, probably at 2x speed, and adding all of these timestamps into this mix. Thank you so much for this, Lori, and I know others of you that visit afterwards. You can go back years of our study groups and find exactly what you're looking for very, very quickly. I'll also let you know that when we're done here, and whenever we're not live, we're always on our Discord. You can find us over at professormesser.com/Discord, along with thousands of other people that are studying for their A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, and other certifications. It really is a fantastic community of folks, and I've got a lot of tools there that you can use to start up your own configurations, to be able to have your own study rooms and to be able to work with those. That's something you can join for free. It's available at professormesser.com/Discord, or you can follow the icons for social media that are on our website. Also let you know that eventually you will need to take the exam. If you're in the US or Canada, I can have you take the exam and save a little bit of money if you purchase the voucher on the Professor Messer website. Those discounted vouchers are for any of the CompTIA exams, and it's exactly the same voucher you can get on the CompTIA website. It's just discounted because we have a partnership with CompTIA. Not only do you get a discount on your voucher, but you also get something for free that you can't get anywhere else. It's a copy of my Exam Hacks ebook. This is an ebook I wrote that has all of the tips and tricks that I put together for taking and passing one of these exams from CompTIA. So there are hints on there about how you could study a little better. There's also some hints and tips in here on how you can do better during the exam itself. I put a number of exam strategies in there. You can find out more about that at professormesser.com/vouchers. Let's go back to that question I asked earlier, which is, a network administrator has configured UPnP. Which of the following would be associated with this change? Would it be authentication is required for network access, static IP address assignments, filtering of inappropriate content, server access from external clients, or visibility of wireless network names? Let's close the poll and see how you did with this one. 39% of you say this allows for server access from external clients, but 28% of you say that authentication is required for network access. Then we have 12% that said filtering of inappropriate content, 10% said visibility of network names, and 9% said static IP address assignments. We almost had double digits all the way through that, except for that last 9% that was there. So UPnP, this is an abbreviation that stands for Universal Plug and Play. And this is different than the Windows technology that they call Plug and Play, which really refers to the addition of hardware into a system and having Windows automatically recognize that hardware. Universal Plug and Play is a network protocol, and it's a method that allows applications to talk directly to your router and configure and open up interfaces or ports on that particular device to allow inbound traffic to a server that normally would not be accessible. This is useful if you have people that have no idea how these firewalls and other security features work in their router, but it has the potential for opening up a number of security concerns. Obviously, having an application that can modify inbound traffic from the internet, probably not the best idea. And in fact, I would recommend that if you do have a router on your system, you might want to disable universal plug and play. It does have some interesting features that could be useful, but only if you really know what it's doing. In fact, you might want to just consider doing everything manually, which sometimes is probably the more secure method. Indeed, that is the answer to this question, and 39% of you got that one right. It is server access from external clients. That's what Universal Plug and Play primarily provides in its functionality. It does not provide any type of authentication requirement, so things like 802.1x or what we would commonly associate with that type of authentication is probably what the 28% of you were thinking about. Often we refer to that as network access control, or NAC. We also have 12% that said filtering of inappropriate content. Usually that is done by a content filtering function. That content filtering function is not UPnP. 10% of you said visibility of wireless network names. That's when you enable or disable the broadcasting of SSIDs, a different acronym altogether. And then we have 9% that said static IP address assignments. That is something that would not normally be configured or set up through Universal Plug and Play. The answer here, and the one we're looking for, is server access from external clients. Hopefully that's given you a perspective of some things that can help you with understanding where the challenges are at answering some of the questions that we have. Now you can get into our Vevox service that allows you to answer these questions. And I have for you next a different kind of question. Let's do some new questions, something you've never seen before. This next question, and the very first new question we do of all of our study groups, is what we call a performance-based question. Really, I guess it's CompTIA that calls it a performance-based question. Their definition of a PBQ, performance-based question, is a question that is simply not multiple choice. So the question we just looked at was a multiple choice question. There was a question and there were multiple options to choose from. Even if you didn't know the answer, you still had a 20% chance of getting that one absolutely right. Well, CompTIA wants to make things a little bit more difficult for you. They want to see if you really do know this content and that you're not accidentally stumbling into the right answer. So one of the things they provide is a different style of question. This might be fill in the blank. They might put you to a command prompt and ask you to perform some functions. There may be drag and drop components to it. You may be putting things in a particular order or a particular range. There are different ways to ask these questions. Now, the important part of this is that they're not going outside the scope of the exam objectives. As long as you know the exam objectives, I like to say that you'll be able to answer the question regardless of how it happens to be asked. So today I have for you a performance-based question. This is really a 3-step performance-based question that comes to you as a fill in the blank. That's what you're going to see online when you go to our link to be able to answer this one. This question is one that says a Windows computer is experiencing slow internet access. So I'd like you to perform 3 different functions at the command line of this system. The first thing is to view the current IP address settings, including DNS server settings. Then I would like you to confirm the status of the default gateway. Is it alive? Is it not alive? Is it talking to you? How would you know? And then the last one is I want to view the routers connecting this computer to 1.1.1.1. There are 3 commands that I'm looking for that will take you down this road of troubleshooting this particular internet access. First is to view the current IP address settings, including the DNS server settings. Second is to confirm the status of the default gateway. And the last one is to view the routers connecting this computer to 1.1.1.1. So hopefully you know what 3 commands I'm looking for. And if you know them, use the link at the bottom of your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA and you can lock in that answer. See if you know what they are. As always, of course, please no answers in the chat room. Please no answers or even hints in the chat room. We're going to pretend that we are at the exam. We are sitting in front of this exam system. We don't have any resources available to us. We don't have a chat room when we're in the exam. Sadly, that is not available to us. That would be nice. We just need a chat. We can ask a friend. We can phone a friend and see what they happen to think in this. We'd have to update that. We have to text a friend. Can't say anything during the exam. You have to be very quiet during the exam. But we can text somebody. They don't let you bring a phone into the exam room. They don't let you bring any method of communicating out to the world into the exam room. You can't do very much in the exam room. It's all up to you and what you remember up in your brain. So let's see what you remember with all of these. We're looking for some very specific commands here, but fortunately, they're not complicated commands. Hopefully, you've already stepped through a number of these and you're familiar with them. I've given you some hints on things that you can work through. I'm looking at a number of answers that are already coming through. Some of you are spot on with what you're looking for. Others of you are giving me information that may be off a little bit. Maybe one of them is not correct, but overall, guys are doing really good with this particular answer. I think some of you have been spending some time at the command prompt and trying to figure out what you could choose to be able to fix or identify what all of this happens to be. This is a very good series of steps for troubleshooting as well. I try to find real world instances. Having been in the world of troubleshooting networks for so long, I try to bring a lot of that knowledge back and apply it to these questions that you get so that they have some application in reality. These are not just written in a vacuum so that we can test different commands. These are things you would normally do whenever you're trying to troubleshoot a system. Let's see if we can break this down and see what the answers might be. Let's go through all three of these issues, of these tasks, I guess, and let's see if the task that I have chosen matches the task that you have chosen. And in some cases, there may be multiple ways to do this, but I'm going to give you an idea as we step through this of the things we would start with. So the first one we have is to view the current IP address settings, including DNS server settings. Many of you are probably familiar with the ipconfig command in Windows. That's something that can show you IP addresses, subnet masks, and default gateways. But we would like to see more than that. I mentioned I want to be able to see even DNS information. And if you simply do an ipconfig, it doesn't show you DNS information. One of the ways you can view this is to perform an ipconfig/all. That ipconfig/all shows you all of this additional information. In a way, it shows you, in some cases, too much information. But for someone like you, who's a technologist, you understand and can parse through all of these details. And you'll notice if you do the ipconfig/all, DNS information, default gateway information, all of these details are right there to be able to see exactly what's going on. Now, also make a note that when you're on this screen, it does show you the IP address for the default gateway, along with the IP addresses for the DNS servers, which are down here just underneath that last red rectangle. This default gateway value is an important one because it is the second part of the questions that we receive. So the answer to the first part of this question is ipconfig/all. So you've got at least some ways that you could focus in on understanding what this option might be. And that solves that first issue that we saw, the first question that we had, which was to view the current IP address settings, including the DNS server. So ipconfig/all would be the answer to that first bullet. Second bullet is confirm the status of the default gateway. As I mentioned earlier, the default gateway is that value that's listed on this screen. In this case, my default gateway is 10.1.10.1. And if we wanted to see if 10.1.10.1 was something that would be useful or would be used, we need to be able to see, is that default gateway talking to us? Is it always providing that information? We would use the ping command. The ping command gives us a way to check the uptime and availability of this device assuming that there's no filtering going on of the Internet Control Message Protocol, or ICMP. ICMP is a very useful protocol for determining if a system is able to communicate on the network. It's a good check. Not all systems allow you to query and receive a response from a device using ICMP, but it is a way that you can perform something very simple like a ping to 10.1.10.1 and see if we get a response back. In this case, we got 4 responses back. This is a local default gateway. It responded back in very short time frames. And indeed, we sent 4 packets. We received 4 packets, which means we lost nothing. That system is up and running. That router is available to us. That default gateway is indeed working. And the last bullet that we had waiting for us is the one that is able to query what are the routers now between our system and the device located at 1.1.1.1. For those of you wondering, 1.1.1.1 is an IP address associated with Cloudflare. They have a wonderful free VPN service they provide using that IP address. That might be something you might want to look into. The app is named, aptly enough, 1.1.1.1. And if we were to perform a trace route to 1.1.1.1, we would use the parameter traceRT. Because we are in Windows, we don't spell out the whole traceroute application, the traceroute program. It's traceRT, and then with the specification of the destination, in this case, that destination is 1.1.1.1. So that is the command we would use. And if you perform that, I have on my local network, there were a couple of hops that did filter ICMP. I mentioned that if ICMP is filtered along this mix, there may be cases where you're not able to receive a ping response or to get a response back when we're performing a trace route. So although we don't know the IP addresses of those particular devices, you can see that finally it does leave this 10. Network, it goes out to the internet, and finally gets to 1.1.1.1, which you'll notice the owners of that server are a little cheeky. They have a reverse DNS. The name of this device literally is spelled out 1.1.1.1. I think we should all do the name of our servers should just be their fully qualified, not the fully qualified domain name. We should really put in a spelling of the IP address. Then we could really remember it. I mentioned that there are multiple ways to provide this information. If you wanted to perform path ping, for example, that is one of the commands you need to know for the A+ certification. The path ping provides you a little bit more than what we were looking for here, but it's a perfectly reasonable answer. And if you chose that one, I think you get credit for that as well. But that is the 3 different scenarios that we wanted to step through. Let me back up and let's look at that screen before. We went way too fast on that one. There it is. We viewed the current IP address settings, including the DNS server settings, by using ipconfig/all. We couldn't use ipconfig by itself in this one because we wanted to see the DNS details. Then we did a ping command to confirm the status of the default gateway because we now know the IP address of the default gateway because we just saw it in the previous command that we ran. And then the last command is a traceRT command to 1.1.1 where we can see all of those routers, and you could run that same trace route on your computer right now. You'll get obviously different IP addresses listed from where you happen to be, but it is something that can help you quite a bit if you're trying to understand what is the path between where I am and where that final destination happens to be. Those are the answers that we were looking for in our performance-based question of the month. Hopefully you got those questions answered and understood what those command lines are. There are a lot of command lines you need to know in this program, in this certification program. So make sure you look through the exam objectives and you really understand what the commands are that are expected of you, because there are both Windows commands and Linux commands that you need to know. It's more than one single operating system. Make sure you are very familiar with those. That's our performance-based question of the month. Hopefully you did well on that one. Let's shift gears back to our multiple choice-based questions. I have one waiting for you right here that asks, a Windows administrator would like to enable an on-screen magnifier on a user's computer. Which of the following should be used for this task? Would it be Let's put it on up here so you can see it. The options are Device Manager, Programs and Features, Performance Settings, Devices and Printers, and Ease of Access Center. All real things. They're all things you should certainly know from your exam objectives, and one of these will be the right answer for this question. The question again asks, a Windows administrator would like to enable an on-screen magnifier on a user's computer. Which of the following should be used for this task? Is it Device Manager, Programs and Features, Performance Settings, Devices and Printers, and Ease of Access Center? If you think you know the answer, follow the link that is on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. See if you know what you would choose in your Windows operating system to be able to make that option available. This is something that I can appreciate as someone who is often looking at multiple machines with very small typefaces, and the screens themselves may be far away from me. The operating system you're using may have features that might allow you to zoom in and out or have an on-screen magnifier show up. So make sure you are familiar with where you can find those in your particular OS. Let's see how you did with this one. The question again asks, a Windows administrator would like to enable an on-screen magnifier on a user's computer. Which of the following should be used for this task? Would it be Device Manager, Programs and Features, Performance Settings, Devices and Printers, or Ease of Access Center? Let's click our End button here and see how you did. Sounds like a gimme on this one. We have 81% that say Ease of Access Center would be the right option, although 12% of you, double digits, say the answer is Programs and Features. Everything drops off about that point to 4% for Performance Settings, 2% for Device Manager, and 0% for Devices and Printers. Nobody chose that one. Well, with 81% of you saying Ease of Access Center, I think we can go along with that one. We know that there are a lot of different ways to enable accessibility in our modern operating systems, and Windows is no different. There's so many different usability enhancements that are available for your keyboard, the screen, how you use the mouse, different configuration settings for gaming systems, a lot that you can do right here from the Ease of Access Center. Make sure you're familiar with all of these options. Sometimes these things get turned on accidentally, and you may need to know, where can I go to turn those things off? So works both ways, I guess. So make sure you're familiar with that. That is in your control panel. Under all control panel items, you can see that it is literally named the Ease of Access Center. That's what we were hoping to find. And indeed, that is exactly what 81% of you chose. Programs and Features is an important part of the control panel, but it's usually used for enabling different operating system features, turning those features completely on or completely off. So if you need to install a new function into the operating system, that's where you would do it. The on-screen magnifier is already built into Windows. There's nothing extra you would need to install, so you would not need to go to Programs and Features. This is also this section of the control panel where you can install or uninstall different applications. We have 4% that said Performance Settings. Those would be used for different configurations for memory settings, virtual memory configurations, but it has nothing to do with the on-screen magnifier. Device Manager, the name sounds like it could be used for an on-screen magnifier, but instead this is the connection between the hardware in your system and the software that you're using in the operating system. These are the device drivers that you would configure, and if you're having a problem with a mouse or a keyboard or a video driver, that's where you would go to configure those. Nobody chose Devices and Printers, which is basically scanners, printers, and other devices like mice and keyboards. Obviously, that was not the case here. We were dealing with an on-screen magnifier, so Devices and Printers had nobody choose that one. This was a landslide. 81% of you chose Ease of Access Center, and you got that one absolutely correct. Let's see if we have another question. We do have another question available. Let's do one more than one more. We have the next one that we will do. This question asks, a user connected to a public wire, a user connected to is connected. Boy, I don't know what I wrote here. A user is connected to a public wireless network at a trade show, but discovered later it was not associated with the event. Which of the following would best describe this attack? Would it be spear phishing, SQL injection, evil twin, brute force, or shoulder surfing? Got a number of options to choose from. A user is connected to a public wireless network at a trade show, but discovered later it was not associated with the event. Which of the following would best describe this attack? Is it spear phishing, SQL injection, evil twin, brute force, or shoulder surfing? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. See if this is one you know. This should be an important one to also consider. I think of this all the time. I was recently at a hotel. I popped open the list of available wireless networks. I was in a downtown large municipality, popped open my list of wireless networks, and I think there must have been 200 wireless networks that popped up on my screen. So this can be very, very easy to have happen. You can accidentally connect to the wrong network. If you think you know the answer to this one, visit the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We will have to see what your option might be. Let's see what the question is. Again, it asks, a user connected to a public wireless network at a trade show, but discovered later it was not associated with the event. Which of the following would best describe this attack? Is it spear phishing, SQL injection, evil twin, brute force, or shoulder surfing? We'll close our poll and see what you answered for this one. 77% of you, another strong showing, say the answer is evil twin. But is it? Because 10% of you said spear phishing, 6% of you said SQL injection, 3% of you said brute force, and 2% of you said shoulder surfing. This is a significant problem on wireless networks because you don't want to connect to a network that might be run by someone who is nefarious. We refer to that circumstance as someone who is using a wireless evil twin because they are clearly looking to cause problems for you. They will create an access point that looks or sounds on the screen like a legitimate access point. If you're in a trade show, maybe they name their access point free trade show access. And then we think, well, there's our free access. Let's click on that. Nope, it was someone else who set up their own access point to be able to do this. You could potentially even say that the answer is one where you're using the same name as the original access point, but you're sending out so much signal that you are overwhelming the existing access points, which makes them even more evil. They look just like the correct access point. How would you even know if you're connecting in to the correct network at that point? This becomes a little bit of a challenge, and one of the reasons we will often tell people that if they are using a Wi-Fi network, that maybe you use some type of encryption. I think that is a thing to consider. If you're on a network, for example, make sure you're using a VPN, make sure you're using some type of encrypted protocol. So even if you were on a wireless evil twin network, then I would absolutely recommend that you use this. That way they wouldn't be able to do anything with this data, even if they got their hands on it, which is very, very useful. Wireless evil twin was the answer we were looking for. That is the one that 77% of you chose, and that is the correct answer. That is the one that would best describe this attack when we look at these other 5 options. Now, why would it not have been one of these? For example, spear phishing. 10% of you chose spear phishing. Spear phishing is when an attacker is targeting a particular person or group of people within an organization. Often these are people that have something that person wants, the attacker wants. So, for example, an attacker who is trying to go after the accounting department because they want them to wire the attacker some money, which happens all the time. That is an example of spear phishing, where they are focusing on a very specific person or a very specific group, and they are trying to focus their attack efforts. That tip of the spear goes towards those particular organizations. We have SQL injection. In this particular case, we did not describe how the network was set up. We didn't describe how the attack took place. And there was no mention in the question about circumventing any type of web server to gain direct access to a database, which is indeed the most common answer here. When you're talking about a access to a database, that would be SQL injection. There was no mention of a database or anything like that in this list either. We have 3% of you said the answer is brute force. Brute force is commonly associated with trying to find the password by trying every possible combination of this. That certainly does not appear to be the case with this particular one, where nobody had to do much work to be able to get access to this person's machine because they connected themselves to an insecure wireless network to begin with. And then 2% of you said shoulder surfing. That's where somebody looks over your shoulder to see what you're doing. That did not appear to be the case here either. You have plenty of information in the question that should point you directly to Evil Twin. And indeed, 77% of you got that one absolutely correct. Well, as you can tell, we've already talked about so many different concepts that are associated with the Core 2 exam. We have talked about security. There have been mentions in here of operating system command lines. We've discussed a lot of different topics, and that's because the CompTIA exams cover a lot of different topics. Obviously, we have a lot of videos that can help you understand those topics. For our A+ course, there are 137 videos that last over 19 hours in length. Now, my goal is to have you watch every single one of those videos. I think that can really help you with your studies, but not everybody has that kind of time. So what I've done is take all of the information associated with these particular study groups, with these videos, with everything that we have in our training courses, and I put them into one set of documents called our course notes. Our course notes are a way that you can have everything listed in that video, all of the text, all of the important tables, all of the important graphics, and they are in this list of course notes for your exam. Not only do we have this available in a format that is a digital form like the one you see on your screen, but we also have a physical form. So it's the same information, just one that you can carry around with you, all in full color. It's got the same text in here. It's got the same breakdown of the tables and the graphics. Anything that you're looking for that was in the video, it's going to be in the course notes as well. These are available for both the Core 1 and the Core 2 exams. That might be something that can help you with your studies, especially if you're not able to make it through every single one of those individual network configurations. This is where you can go for that. Well, it would be good if you went here. There we go. These course notes are something you can find on our website. Go to professormesser.com/ let's see, get it up on the screen so you can see it here. There we go, /1102 notes. That would be useful if you were able to go out there. It's also something that can help us as well, help support what we're doing here. Have a look at our course notes. Maybe that can be something that you can add to your list of study materials. We've got other things that can help you with your studies as well. We'll talk about more of those coming up next. Now let's go to another question. I have for you the next question on this list is this one here. Your Windows computer will occasionally show, one moment please, while I try to fix my view of my video switcher here. Let's see if I can break it the right way this time. A Windows computer will occasionally show the message, your computer is low on memory. Which of the following would provide the best way to troubleshoot this issue? Would it be, let me get out of the way here, would it be Event Viewer, Windows Explorer, bootrec.exe, Task Manager, or Device Manager? See if you know the answer to this one. If you think you know the answer, please use the link that's on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We will see if we know what the answer is for these. Let me see if I can fix my switcher while we're waiting on this. Your Windows computer will occasionally show the message, your computer is low on memory. Which of the following would provide the best way to troubleshoot this issue? Would it be Event Viewer, Windows Explorer, bootrec.exe, task manager, or device manager. Lock in your answer. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in what you think the right answer might be. You can see I'm struggling here with my switcher that has decided to switch everything I touch when it's not really supposed to switch everything I touch. So I'm not sure. I'm flipping around here. I'm doing things in the background that you're not supposed to see, and you're seeing me do it. So I apologize for the flipping around of the different things that are on the screen. We're just trying to get this to do what it is supposed to do. And I can't say that I am being very successful with that. We'll figure it out, though, as we go through. I've probably created quite a little bit of a problem for myself. So I'm going to flip over and see if I can figure out what I've done with this one. I can, in my preview, if I change that, it just changes the side, doesn't it? Oh, that's super weird. It is not supposed to do that. And everything I see on my screen says it is set up exactly the way it's supposed to be. So we're just going to run with it. We're going to see how well we do with making all these things happen. That's the beauty of a live event anyway, is having all these things happen. We can always try something else in just a bit and see this. Let's see how you did with this question, though. It again asks, a Windows computer will occasionally show the message, your computer is slow is low on memory. Which of the following would provide the best way to troubleshoot this issue? Is it Event Viewer, Windows Explorer, bootrec.exe, Task Manager, or Device Manager? Let's see what you chose. We will close our poll, and we can see that 71% say the answer is Task Manager. 10 people say Event Viewer is what you would use. 9% say Device Manager is a better choice. You've got 5% that say Windows Explorer, and then 2% say bootrec.exe. Well, low memory is an obvious challenge. You don't want to be in a situation where you're having an issue with the memory. So that is something that maybe you can work through. You'll get a message on your screen that says something like this. It will say, quite literally, your computer's low on memory. There it is right here. It has to restore enough memory for programs to work correctly, save your files, and then close or restart all open programs. But wouldn't it be nice to know what program is using up all of our available memory? Maybe it's a memory leak. Maybe it's a bug with the application that we're using. It would be useful to know which application it is so that we can then contact the manufacturer of the application, the developer, and have them provide us with a patch. One of the ways to do that is to list out all of the devices and applications running on your system and to see how much memory they're using. One of the best ways to do this is with Task Manager. Task Manager gives you a lot of detail about the memory in your system, not just memory, but CPU and disk access, network communication. You can get a lot of information, but you can have a look at how much memory a system might be using, and you can really understand which application is the one that has used up all of this memory. Now, you may find that the memory itself is being evenly distributed between all of these apps. When you run into that situation, you might want to consider going through and getting maybe additional memory. Maybe we need to upgrade the physical memory in our system, or maybe we need to enable perhaps some virtual memory. The virtual memory is one that can help us add additional a separate type. It's not really memory. It's a virtual memory because we're taking things out of memory and we're saving them onto the storage drive of our system. That is certainly not as fast as actual RAM chips in our system, but it can get things out of the way so our system at least is usable in the time being. So that can really save you quite a bit if you're in that situation. Virtual memory can save you quite a bit of time and effort while you're waiting perhaps on those updated memory chips to come in. That's something you might want to think about too. If you're ever in that situation, I think that might be a good one to focus on. Let's see how you did with this. If we look at the options that were available for this one, I say that we can see that 71% of you say Task Manager was indeed the answer that we were looking for. 71% of you chose that one, so it was a good number of you. Now, why would it not have been Event Viewer? Now, if you've ever looked at Event Viewer, it is an enormous event log of everything that happens in your Windows operating system. And if you tried to parse through an unfiltered event viewer, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of events that go by very, 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 very quickly. It's great for troubleshooting, and if you know how to filter things out, it can be an extremely valuable troubleshooting tool. But if you're simply trying to determine what system is using the most memory, Event Viewer is not going to be able to provide you with that. It may provide a report that says we're having a low memory issue, but it won't provide you with any more detail. The best one to go to is indeed Task Manager. Device Manager, as we mentioned earlier, is a way that you can manage the device drivers that are in your system. This is the software that binds the hardware and the software of your operating system together into each other. So if you're dealing with a problem with a mouse, with a keyboard, with a video driver, with any type of hardware, then device driver would have been the right answer. In our case, computer being low on memory, Device Manager doesn't provide us with any feedback about the memory usage of our computer. We also have 5% that said Windows Explorer. That is our file management front end. And although it's very useful for copying files, renaming folders, and managing our file system, it doesn't provide us with any information about the memory usage of our computer. And lastly, bootrec.exe. If you've ever had to manage the boot process of your Windows system and be able to point it to the correct directory for Windows, bootrec.exe provides you with that. Has nothing to do with managing the memory utilization or even seeing what system or application is using the most amount of memory. If you're trying to troubleshoot, your best troubleshooting option there is indeed Task Manager. 71% of you chose that option. That is the right answer, and that's what you should choose if you are trying to troubleshoot any type of memory problem on your system. You might want to load up and try, if you're in Windows, try opening Task Manager right now. It can provide you with a lot of information. And once you become an expert with Task Manager, you will find the troubleshooting process goes so much faster. If you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, I would love to give you an email that certifies that you are here for this 1 hour of a webinar category CEU, Continuing Education Unit. That 1 hour of CEU is one that I will send to you via email, but only if you follow these instructions. The way that you can earn that CEU is to go to professormesser.com and click at the top or bottom of our website, the Contact Us link. That Contact Us link, put in your name, your email address, and in the subject line, please put December 2024 Core 2, just so I know where this came from. And then in the body of the message, on a line by itself, please put the super secret code words of the month, Task Manager, Device Manager. All four of those 4 words are what I'm looking for in that message. You can also put any other message you want in there. I read through all of these, and thank you for adding any additional information there. I'd love to hear where you are in your troubleshooting path, in your certification process, in your job hunt. It's always interesting to get some feedback there. But if you only want to put our super secret codes words of the month, Task Manager, Device Manager, that's fine too. I know exactly what to do from that point on. So the process again, go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click on Contact Us, put in your name, your email address on the subject line. Please put December 2024 Core 2. And in the body of the message on a line by itself, so put the super secret code words of the month, Task Manager, Device Manager. And then I turn these around in about a week, sometimes faster, sometimes a little bit slower, but I get them there eventually, and you will be able to receive from me. If everything works out, if everything is correct, you'll receive from me an email that certifies that you are here for 1 hour of a webinar category CEU. Let's do some more questions, shall we? I have another one for you. This next question is this that asks, which of the following would allow Windows users to receive remote troubleshooting assistance by sending an email invitation? Would that be MSRA, SFTP, IPsec, HTTPS, or SSH? There's a lot of abbreviations here. Which of the following would allow a Windows user to receive remote troubleshooting assistance by sending an email invitation? Is it MSRA, SFTP, IPsec, HTTPS, or SSH? If you think you know the answer, follow this link, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. See if you know what this one is. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Instead, this is where you should be. That's the link that will get you right to where you want to be anyway, to be able to answer this question. professormesser.com/QA. The CEU that we just mentioned was that's a continuing education unit credit commonly used to maintain and renew existing certifications. If you don't have a certification yet, that CEU process is relatively useless. You can't earn a CEU until you are certified. At that point, you can then earn CEUs. So it's a whole timing issue. We'll figure that part out as we go. Now, if you sent one in anyway and you're not certified, that's okay. I'll send one back to you. You just can't do anything with it. Figure out the details. A lot of you locked in your answer very quickly on this one. So I want to know how you did. Let's have a look. The question again asks, which of the following would allow a Windows user to receive remote troubleshooting assistance by sending an email invitation? Is that MSRA, SFTP, IPsec, HTTPS, or SSH? What did you choose? Let's hit the answer and see what the different options are. 59% say MSRA, but 20% say the answer is SSH. We have a tie at 7% between SFTP and HTTPS, and then we have only 4% that chose IPsec. So if we go with our majority here of 59%, the answer is MSRA. MSRA is an abbreviation that stands for Microsoft Remote Assistance. MS for Microsoft, RA for Remote Assistance. This is one way, especially for people that are running Windows Home, where there is no ongoing or persistent remote access service on that computer. On those systems, the user can make a request on their desktop. Looks like this, where it says, do you want to ask for help or offer help? And then you can invite someone you trust to help you. And that will either be provide information on the screen that can be a file that you can then send to somebody. And if you have integration with email already built into your operating system, it can simply send the email from there, which makes the process even more streamlined. And it uses another option called Easy Connect if that's available with the helper that you happen to be using. The technician will then connect to you. And by technician, I mean your family member has to connect to you and then use a password that was provided as part of this process. So people can't just randomly connect to grandma's computer. You have to know what these passwords are to be able to gain access. So there is security based on this. This has been renamed a bit in the latest version of Windows. Windows 10 and Windows 11 don't use that older name of Microsoft Remote Assistance, but it's still around. We still use that name because we used it for so long. So you'll sometimes hear this referred to as MSRA. A more accurate description, a more modern term for this is something called Quick Assist. That's what's in Windows 10 and Windows 11 is the Quick Assist function. That's what you would choose. In this particular case, the Microsoft Remote Assistance, or MSRA, is the right answer. And 59% of you chose that one as what you would choose. That is what you obviously would be correct here. But what about these other options? 20% of you, for example, said the answer is SSH, Secure Shell. And by default, Secure Shell is probably one of the most used utilities and protocols for people that are performing maintenance and connecting to systems across a network. So if you're managing a router, you're managing a switch, you're configuring a firewall, you're probably connecting at the command line to those devices. And if you are, then you are probably using SSH or Secure Shell because it is an encrypted communication. However, Windows machines don't come with any type of SSH service already turned on, and you certainly would not be able to receive remote troubleshooting assistance with an email using SSH. So none of those types of things are going to fit in this particular scenario, although SSH, very valuable, doesn't fit the scenario that we were looking at with this question. Similar is situation for SFTP, which is the file transfer protocol using an encrypted tunnel. So we put an S in the front of it for the secure part of FTP. That allows you to transfer files to a system, normally requires some type of authentication, but it has nothing to do with a Windows user getting remote troubleshooting assistance by sending an email. It has nothing to do with SFTP. HTTPS is an interesting one because there are certainly some technologies that use HTTPS, that is the secure version of the hypertext transfer protocol, to be able to send information back and forth between systems. But HTTPS is not what is used by default for a Windows user to receive remote troubleshooting assistance, especially when we already had the option of MSRA as one of the available options on that list. And then lastly, IPsec is a protocol commonly associated with encrypted tunnels, VPN communication. Normally site-to-site communication can also be used for in-station VPNs, just not very commonly. But IPsec, although great as a security protocol, is not used for receiving remote troubleshooting assistance. The answer here, the best answer, and really the only one that makes any sense in this scenario, is indeed MSRA. That's the one I would choose as well. That's the one that you chose. At least 59% of you chose that one. That is the one that makes sense. So hopefully you're now more familiar with the remote troubleshooting process. We're coming up on the holidays. Maybe you'll be using this a lot more, because now this is when the family always tells you, you know about computers. Maybe you can help me with this issue. 2 days later, you're still working on it. So that's your little holiday gift to the rest of the family. Congratulations. We all have to go through it. It's a trial. And that's why all of my family now has Macs. I just made sure. No more calls. I don't have to worry about that anymore. Let's do more questions, shall we? We have a little bit of time left. We can get through a couple more. This next question, maybe this is one you've also run through. I don't want to give too many gimmies in here, but maybe you've used this. The question asks, a Windows user is modifying their mouse wheel options. Which settings panel is being used? Is this using personalization, privacy, devices, apps, or system? This is more of a Windows 11 type question, isn't it? A Windows user is modifying their mouse wheel options. Nothing bad can come from this. Which settings panel is being used? Is it personalization, privacy, devices, apps, or system? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. That's the link that's right there on your screen, and lock in your answer. See if you know what this one happens to be. A lot of you in the chat room, they are commiserating with me over fixing the family's computer. Thank you for your support. We all need to support each other in these trying times of the holidays. That's kind of how that works. This should help you as you are going through. Now, this is indeed a Windows settings question. You really have to be familiar not only with the control panel in Windows, but there's sort of a newer version, or what Windows is moving towards as a control panel, and it is the settings panel. But the settings panel has many options, just as the control panel has many options. We need to know where to find things in the settings panel just as much as we need to be able to find things within the control panel. So let's see how you did with this one. The question again asks, a Windows user is modifying their mouse wheel options. Which settings panel is being used? Is it personalization, privacy, devices, apps, or system? What did you choose? Let's have a look. 73% of you say the answer is devices. 21% of you say the answer is personalization. They're personalizing their mouse wheel options, right? We got 3% that say system. Makes sense too. It's part of the system. 1% is apps. Maybe not as obvious in that case. And 0% say privacy. The mouse apparently has nothing to do with the privacy of your system. If you are trying to manage the functionality of a piece of hardware, of a device, then most commonly you will go to the area marked devices. That is indeed exactly where it is. So you have Bluetooth options, you have mouse configurations, audio settings, you've got printers and scanners. There's so many different options to choose from. So anything that is a device, they try to put into one place so you can find and click through everything that's on your system. Mouse settings like the button and wheel options are indeed listed here. So this is where you would go if you need to modify and update some of those configurations. So if you are already familiar with the settings panel within Windows, this was probably an easy one for you. If you're not familiar with the settings panel, there's a group of settings areas that you need to know about. They are in the exam objectives. Make sure you have a look at those. Those will be important to you as well. A user modifying their mouse wheel options is indeed using devices. 73% of you chose that as the answer, and that is indeed correct. 21% said personalization. In this particular case, the mouse wheel options are not part of the personalization of the system. Personalization tends to focus on the user interface. So it would be your background, colors on the screen, typefaces that are used, scaling options. That's what you find in the personalization area, but not mouse wheel options. 3% of you say the answer is system. That is focused really on the underlying operating system functionality. 1% said apps, and indeed, that's where you would go to modify app configurations. The mouse wheel options are not part of a third-party app. They are built into the operating system itself. And nobody chose privacy because why would you? We're dealing with a mouse. This has nothing to do with privacy. That is indeed the best possible answer we're looking for is devices. 73% of you chose that one. That is indeed exactly what we were looking for. And maybe that gives you an idea of what you might want to work on studying for when you finally get to your app, to ready to take your exam, both exams for A+, the Core 1 and the Core 2. Which brings us, I know that we're at the top of the hour, but let's do one more question. This next question is one that comes from a different place, not one that I've already created for this, but I have an entire book that I have written of practice questions. In fact, there are 3 separate practice exams that I have created as part of my 220-1102 Core 2 practice exams book. I wrote this book because there is a lot of questions that people have about the exam itself. And if you go out to the internet, you will find that the questions out there are of, well, just to put it nicely, they are of dubious quality. They are challenging, to say the least. Many of the questions don't apply to the latest version of the exam. The questions that do apply aren't written very well, and often they have the wrong answers associated with them. So whenever you run into that scenario, you may be thinking, these are not the questions for me. I thought it'd be best if we had some higher quality questions, perhaps questions that were written with the same style or the same cadence that you might find on an actual exam. So what if somebody sat down and really created questions with that in mind? So I did. And the example and what you would find is what you have here with my practice exams book. Let me give you a feel for what this looks like. I have a question for you. Again, no answers in the chat room. Please, no hints in the chat room. This is my practice exams book. This is from Practice Exams A, the first set of practice exam in the book of the 3. It's on page 18, question A51. So this question asks, a user in the marketing department is using an application that randomly shuts down during normal use. When the problem occurs, the application suddenly disappears and no error messages are shown on the screen. Which of the following would provide the system administrator with additional information regarding this issue? Would it be system configuration, event viewer, device manager, group policy editor, or SFC? Now, this is a PDF, so if you have a stylus that you can use, or you'd like to use your mouse, and you'd like to make some notes on the screen, maybe you think you know what the answer is, or you'd like to change your answer on the screen, you can always do something like that with your stylus or with the options available in your PDF reader. The other option that's here, obviously, is we'd like to see the answer. Now, there is a link or a connection here that says the quick answer is on page 33. We're on page 18. And if you wanted a detailed answer, it's on page 87. Well, obviously, I don't want you spending all day scrolling through a book just to be able to find the right answers. So since this is a PDF, I could put hot links in it, and you can see that my arrow that's a cursor turns into a hand. If I click on the words, the details, it takes me to page 87. So here's the question again with the possible answers, and it tells me that the answer is indeed B, event viewer. And of course, I explain why in the explanation of this, why that is the right answer. Now, the problem I often have with these questions is that often I choose the wrong answer but there's nothing to explain to me why the wrong answer was wrong. I think that's a huge mistake for these practice exams because that's a great learning opportunity. I want to be able to learn more about that particular topic. So in my book, every incorrect answer is fully documented as to why I think it's incorrect, so that you can give the same logic to your answers as well. So if you chose Group Policy Editor, I explain why that doesn't apply in this particular question. If somebody's saying SFC, I explain why SFC is not the right answer. I'll also tell you, if you already have this and you're answering the question right, take a moment to read through the wrong answers. Everything in the book, or practically 99.999% of these answers in the book, are real things you should know for the exam. So knowing the right answer is useful, but if you happen to read through the wrong answers, you're also learning more about the technologies that could be asked of you on the real exam. Your exam might have a question about Group Policy Editor or SFC or Device Manager, and you've learned a little bit about those technologies by clicking right through and understanding them. So that's what I would recommend you do. Also, since this is a PDF, you may not even realize many PDF readers have a back button in them. Mine does. It's hard to see. It's up here at the top. There's the back button that's there. If you click the back button in your PDF reader, it takes you back to where you started. And you can simply go to the next question that's in this list. So that gives you an easy way to move back and forth through this book without having to scroll, which I think is a great thing to do if you're someone who's really working through the details of this. If you get the practice exams and the course notes at the same time, there's even a little bit of a cost break. So you might want to consider doing that for your Core 1 exam, your Core 2 exam, or get all 4 of them at the same time. Find out more on our website. Go to professormesser.com/core2pe, or you can go to the main menu of our website and simply choose the option for our practice exams. And for all of you that have already purchased the practice exams, and if you're considering purchasing these practice exams, thank you so much. It does help us continue with our efforts to provide this training to you and make these videos available to you on YouTube for absolutely free. So you're a big part of that, and thank you so much. We have also another resource. This is a really good one that's absolutely free. I love the cost. These are the official CompTIA exam objectives. You can find these at professormesser.com/objectives. They will list for you everything you need to know for the CompTIA exam. And I mean everything. This is a breakdown of every topic broken out by individual bullets for every section. So if you want to know every command you should know in Microsoft Windows, it gives you every command you need to know. You need to know different scenarios. What about the MMC? What about understanding the additional tools and what they might be? If you can check all of these off, you can say that you are now ready to take this exam. So this makes a great checklist for your studies, and it helps you answer that question of, am I really ready to take this exam? These exam objectives can tell you. And as I mentioned, they're absolutely free. You can find these at professormesser.com/objectives. Well, we've come to the end of our first hour of the study group, but stick around. I'm going to be taking your questions in the second hour. We also have study groups that we do every month. We have A+, Core 1, A+, Core 2, Network Plus, and Security Plus study groups that we do. Next week, I am doing the last Network Plus and Security Plus study group of the month, so you might want to check our calendar if you'd like to attend those. We have also already scheduled our A+ study groups for January. Currently, they are scheduled for January 7th and January 9th, but these dates can sometimes change, so I highly encourage you to always check in and look at professormesser.com/calendar or look at the events channel in our Discord. I always keep those two places up to date so you know when the next event is going to be. Well, we've done an hour, but stick around for the after show. I want your questions that I will answer in our after show. Don't forget about our course notes and practice exams. You can see both of those by going to professormesser.com/1102success. We also have our discounted vouchers if you are in North America. That would be the U.S., Canada, or U.S. territory. Not even necessarily North America. That's at professormesser.com/vouchers. And of course, you can find us online at your favorite social media site. You simply type in professormesser.com/ the name of the place you'd like to find us, /Facebook, /Twitter, /X, /YouTube, /Instagram. It's an easy way to find wherever you happen to be and see if we happen to be there as well. And if we're not there, let me know, and I'll get an account set up on that particular location as well. Well, thank you so much for joining us in this first hour. Stick around for our after show. Well, I'll take your questions. Again, this is something that we're now at the end of our calendar year. We're approaching the holidays. We want to thank you so much for everything you have done for us in 2024, and we look forward to a very exciting 2025. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on the A+ Study Group. Thanks, everybody. Okay, let's now... Yeah, I do have a Blue Sky account, but I've not set it up to do any of the pop quiz questions yet. I'm still working on the best way to make that automation work for me. I am not happy with where my camera is. Now it's bugging me. Now I feel like I have to sit up a little bit to have that. Probably not a bad idea, right? This is the section of the study group that we like to call our after show. The after show is more of me, instead of me asking the questions of you, I'm going to have you ask questions of me. A little bit different than what we've been doing so far. We're sort of spinning this around in a different direction. And if you go to professormesser.com/QA, you will see this message that says you can submit questions for the second hour of the study group at any time. We will be moderating questions during the session, so your contribution may not appear immediately. Well, it won't appear immediately because I have to click things on my side for you to be able to do that. But you can submit your question whenever you would like by going to professormesser.com/QA. There's a link at the top of your screen for the questions. A lot of you have already put some questions in here. Thank you so much for submitting them. I'm going to step through the questions that you have in here and see if there are different options or different things that we might want to discuss in here. You can ask any question about anything you'd like. As I often say, I don't necessarily want to answer every question you could possibly ask, but you're welcome to ask it. I do sometimes get some very amusing questions, which aren't very productive for what we're doing, but it does make me laugh internally, even though you may not hear it externally. That's okay. Let's see if we can go through this list and see what questions you have that might help for you. There's a number of these. This is not really a weird question. I think this is a useful question, especially if you're someone who is working on earning your A+ certification for the first time. This is from Hussein, who asks, "Hi, Professor Messer, a bit of a weird question." I don't think it's weird. "How long did you take to achieve the A+?" And then in parentheses, Hussein writes, "I hope you achieve 1 million subs soon. You've been here since our 600K. You've been here a while then, because it's taken me a long time to get from 600,000 up to 1 million. So thank you for hanging in there for such an extended period of time. We are very close to 1 million subscribers. I don't really beg for subscribers on YouTube. It's not really what I do. I tend to look at the subscriber list as a after the fact. How well are we doing? And that number is more feedback than anything. I try not to drive the number. The wagging the dog is not what I want to do. I want to have the tail going because everyone's happy. So we are getting very close. So we're very excited about that. And thank you for mentioning it. Let's talk about achieving the A+ on the very first time. I took an interesting path with the CompTIA exams. I was working for a large multi-billion-dollar software company at the time was formerly known as McAfee. Now, we can talk love-hate when it comes to McAfee, and trust me, I have plenty of love and plenty of hate. We can always communicate and talk about those offline if you would like. But at the time, McAfee was not McAfee. Back when there was a very busy ramp up with technology and technology organizations, quite a few years ago at this point, we had a merger. McAfee purchased the company I worked for. I worked at the time for Network General. This was the company, if you've ever heard the term the sniffer, we often use sniffer as a generic term for capturing packets from the network and being able to view the protocol decodes of those packets. But sniffer itself is a product that was originally created by Network General. So I was a systems engineer at Network General. I was a packet guy. I was somebody who went through and looked at and understood not just the packets themselves, but what was going on over the network. That's because I worked for a company as a network administrator, and I really learned a lot about the protocols on the network and then used the sniffer to be able to look at those protocols. So you learn a lot about networking on different topologies. You learn a lot about IP, TCP, UDP, the internal communications of applications, and it had built into it what today we call AI, but at the time it was called the Sniffer Expert. And that was its own version. It's probably much better than what we would have today. I'm glad we didn't call it AI because it was actually good. It actually worked, unlike some of the things we see today. So being able to have a system that looked at the packets going by, you could interpret and filter on those packets and view that information, and you can understand what's going on. You can see why McAfee, if they were wanting to get into the security world, would want that particular technology. So they acquired the company. One of the things that came of that is that now, not only did I have to know the protocol analysis side of things, I had to really understand the world of antivirus, enterprise AV, and understanding how to manage this on a very large scale. Because although we sometimes think of McAfee as the thing that gets bundled with all the computers you buy from a big box store, obviously McAfee and the other antivirus companies make and have a very large business on the enterprise side, where you have thousands and maybe even tens or hundreds of thousands of systems that have to be managed from one central place. So I became part of McAfee, and instead of calling it McAfee, we had McAfee Associates and Network General. So they changed the name to Network Associates. They just took a name from each one, and now Network Associates was a thing. Network Associates doesn't exist anymore. For those of you wondering, that name doesn't sound familiar. It is not. It no longer exists because a number of years into this marriage between McAfee and Network General, McAfee decided this was not the marriage we were expecting, and we got a divorce. Effectively, Network General divested itself away from McAfee. McAfee turned into McAfee again. Network General turned into Network General again. So we did a do-over. We did just forget about the last 7 or so years, the last 10 years, however long that took. It wasn't as long as 10 years, I don't think. The pain is it's dulled things in my memory. So I don't remember quite as much as I probably should of that entire situation. But we became Network General again. So I kind of got out of that level of business. But while I was with Network, to bring us back to the question, while I was with Network Associates, there was a big push for the engineers to have some type of credentials. And so I thought, well, I really don't have, I have the Network General style credentials, which were more networking and protocol analysis. But they said, we want you to get a security credential. I'm like, well, I've heard of Security Plus. Could do that one. Let's do Security Plus. And I told my manager, I'll get Security Plus this year. We'll put that on my list of things to do, because they always make this list at the beginning of the year to see how well they can evaluate you once the 12 months are over. So I said, I'm going to go get Security Plus. Notice I didn't get it. I don't have an A Plus at that point. I don't have Network Plus at that point. Security Plus was really my very first CompTIA exam. I kind of did this backwards. So I went out and got Security Plus first. That was my first exam. That took me a number of months. I'm the kind of person that takes like 6 months to study for a certification. I think that one probably took me 3 or 4 months. So it was more of the average at that point. And I earned my Security Plus. I thought, well, that was interesting. I'm finding an affinity to this idea of certifications. And I had been getting certifications in the industry for years. I'd already had what at the time was called a CNX certification, Certified Network Expert, in different topologies. So I became an Ethernet Certified Network Expert, a cabling certified network expert. And there were others of different topologies that we no longer use in our industry anymore, such as token ring, FIDI, and ATM. So that was kind of the foundational certifications, but I'd also gone out and gotten the Microsoft Certified Systems Engineer. That was a series of 6 different certification exams you had to pass. And it was one of the nicer Microsoft focused certifications. That helped me a lot in the world of protocol analysis, because if you've ever looked at protocols from a Microsoft perspective, there's a lot that you need to know, and it helps you understand what they are doing. So that was a core piece of my knowledge foundation that I was building. So Security Plus seemed to be a logical next step. The next thing I did, since I got that one, I thought, well, what's the rest of these CompTIA certifications like? Let's go see. Let's go look at Network Plus. So I went out and I thought, well, networking I'm very familiar with. I'm a protocol guy. I'm a packets person. So let's now go get that one. I had to study a little bit for that, but I was already so familiar with the world of networking. That was a relatively easy one to just slide into and earn the certification. And then I thought, well, if I have Security Plus and I have Network Plus, I've been working with computers forever. One of my very first jobs out of college was working for a computer company, was doing upgrades and field service type work. I've done workstation administration. Let's get our A+. And that was the point when I started going through A+, I realized I really don't know as much as I thought I did in the world of personal computers, because A+ covers so many different topics, not just with hardware, but the operating systems themselves. So I found that what I ended up doing was really going through the process of trying to understand everything I needed to know, laid it all out, used my exam objectives. Basically, what I tell you are the best practices for earning your A+ certifications. And I ended up getting my A+, but it took a number of months to step through that. I thought I'd be able just to walk in with barely any study. And instead, it took me months of time for somebody who was already seasoned as an engineer in the field to be able to understand things that maybe I had not touched upon before. I knew what RAID was. There was a whole section on memory. I just bought the memory modules and installed them, never thinking of how they were installed, what they did, how the connections were, where the connections went over the motherboard, because generally you don't have to worry about that. So that was the process for me. I went in reverse. I guess if you do it that way, from my perspective, I went the right path. I started with Security Plus and followed the path that made the most sense for me. And that's why I think that you should consider that. If you're looking at a certification, there should be a reason that you're getting that cert. Are you looking to get a job or a better job? If so, what are the hiring managers looking for? What are the job descriptions asking for? There should be something directing you in that place. I see a number of people come across my site and they're just coming in and asking, hey, what cert do I need? I don't know. Where do you live? What are you doing? What's your history like? What do you want to do in the future? What are hiring managers and companies in your area asking for? There's so many different variables around that. No one on the internet, or really even in person, can answer that question, because we don't know enough about what you are trying to do. Everybody has a different path. They have a different set of goals and objectives. They have a different set of things that are important to them. They have a different long-term strategy of where they'd like to go. And all of those things affect what you might want to do in the world of IT certifications. So don't worry so much about what other people are telling you is the right path. You can certainly evaluate their input, but you're the one that really has to come up with that direction and understand the strategy of where you would like to go. Hopefully that's given you some perspective. You're saying, thank you so much for that question. Let's do some more questions that you have. Again, if you'd like to submit a question for me, I'm just going through the list that is here. You can go to professormesser.com/QA to submit your question at any time. There are a number of questions in here for this. Let's look at this one. This is a question I asked earlier, that if you are on a service that is that you would like to have my podcast show up on, just let me know. And I have one here that asks, course training videos, are they available via an audio format to listen in an Apple podcast? Our training videos are obviously available for you to listen or watch for free on YouTube at any time. I do have downloadable versions of both the videos and the audio that you can purchase from our website. So although it is not in an Apple store and it's not in an Apple podcast format, it is one that you can easily import into your Apple Music player on your device. We have instructions on how to do all of that once you purchase it from our website, but you can get downloadable audio and downloadable video, and you can choose which one you would like to be able to add to your mobile device and just take it with you wherever you went. So although it's not on the Apple library, so to speak, you can easily add it to your mobile device by going to our website, purchase our audio downloadable version or our Success Bundle, which includes our video downloads as well. More questions if we have on here. We'll certainly go through the list that you have. A lot of great questions on here, by the way. I'm going to try to get through as many of these as I possibly can. In our Q&A that we did earlier, we talked a lot about different technologies, and one of the questions was specifically about wireless evil twins. Wireless evil twins can be quite a challenge, and the question that Ariel has is, what can the evil twin Wi-Fi network do to your data? Well, someone who has put a device in the middle of a communication so that they are the wireless access point that you are connecting to can first see all the traffic that you're sending to and from this wireless network. You're communicating to the evil twin wireless access point that the attacker has control of. They get to see all the packets going in and out. So if any of that communication happens to be in the clear, it's not encrypted communication, and sometimes you may use an application or a website that is not properly encrypting that data. Anyone in the middle will be able to see that data, and they may be able to acquire information that you would rather them not have access to. Another thing that they can do, especially if this data is not encrypted, is they can modify the data in real time as it's going through the access point. So they may be able to modify what's being shown on the screen that you see. If they wanted to embed any malicious code, they can do it as the traffic is going by. If they wanted to change the words that are on the page that you are viewing, they can do that. They wanted to modify the graphics that you see on your screen, they can do that. They can modify anything about that flow if it's being sent in a non-encrypted form. That's why I mentioned if you are concerned about an wireless evil twin, that one of the ways that you can minimize the effects of this wireless evil twin is that you can simply encrypt all of your data. Open up a VPN tunnel and send all of your data over that VPN tunnel. At that point, your data is protected. Really, the only thing an evil twin can do at that point would be able to make the entire experience just miserable for you, effectively perform a denial of service, slow down the communication flow, make it so that wireless access point is not very usable. That probably doesn't help the evil twin, the person who owns the evil twin very much, because then you'll probably disconnect from that wireless network and try something else just because it's not working very well. So that's a very good example of how this evil twin can indeed cause a lot of trouble for you if you're communicating over insecure protocols or protocols that are by themselves completely in the clear. That is something you want to be very careful about. I wish I had the screenshot with me. I'm going to have to bring this up, make a blog post or something of the list of wireless access points I saw when I was in downtown Miami this past week. Just popped open to connect to a wireless network and saw hundreds and hundreds of networks pop up. I didn't count how many total. It had to be 200 that were on my screen. Some of them were wireless access points that were not broadcasting an SSID. You may be asking, how do you know what was not broadcasting an SSID? Because I then brought up an analysis tool. Once I saw the big list popped up in my operating system, I thought, how many are really here? So I popped open some wireless tools to be able to understand what in the world is going on with the spectrum here. Why am I seeing so many different? But so many people live in downtown Miami. You can imagine every apartment, it's got its own wireless access point. That can be a bit of a challenge. So that was a real issue. And I was very concerned about an evil twin because I'm always thinking the worst is going to happen. So I want to be sure when I'm connecting to a wireless network that I'm connecting to one that I know is a good wireless network. And even on top of that, I think maybe encrypting your data is always a good idea regardless. That's pretty important. Let's keep going through this list. Some of you, thank you for sending these questions, by the way, some great questions coming in and being able to work through this. So this is an important one. We mentioned this earlier, but I think it's important that we also emphasize this. This is from my good friend Anonymous, who asks, "Hi PM, The last A+ exam series ended earlier in the middle of the year, I think August. Will they change current series or end it before the end of the year? Stressing out at the moment because I recently passed the Core 1. So my question is, will they retire this series earlier than November of 2025? Let's look at these stats. I'm going to bring up that screen that I showed you earlier for the A+ exams, specifically both the 220-1101 and 220-1102. This is the stats on this one. These were exams that were released on April the 20th of 2022. We estimate that the retirement for this exam will be around November of 2025. CompTIA has not announced the exact date yet, but I'm thinking October, November timeframe is a pretty good guess. I do not expect that you will see anything go away before October or November of 2025. That's because what they tend to do when a new version of the exam series is released, they don't simply close down the old series immediately. They give you about a 6-month overlap so that you can plan for this retirement date. So as we sit here in December, you have 11 months or so, 10 to 11 months before this exam series goes away at all. That's plenty of time to pass both exams if you were starting right now, and I would highly encourage you to do so. I will expect that somewhere around the April timeframe of this upcoming year of 2025, we may see a new version of the A+ exams show up. But that's okay, because the current version as we sit here now with the 1101 and 1102 don't go away until the October-November timeframe. And as I mentioned before, whether you pass the current versions of the exams or you pass the version of the exams that are in May, June, July of next year, whatever that next version is, both of those give you the same A+ certification. And both of those will certify you for 3 years. So the important thing to know here is whether you take the existing version of the exams or the next version of the exams, you are in the same cert. There's really no benefit for waiting. If anything, you're actually at a disadvantage if you were to wait for a new series of exams, because everybody who's working now to earn their cert is now certified and you are not. And if you're trying to get a job or get another job, be nice to have that certification in your pocket. That's why I always say never, never, never wait to get certified. You should always work to get that certification. Never put it and push it down the road. Never kick that can down the road. That's not what you want to do. If you want to have the best possible outcome for yourself, your career, and your family, you need to get this certification right now. Don't wait for somebody else for some arbitrary reason to get a different set of questions on your exam, because that's all it really is. Although I will tell you, and we'll talk more about this after the new year, the next series of exams really isn't going to change very much. So waiting for a new series of exams is really now a waste of your time. Start working on your exam now, earn your certification. You may have your certification already done before a new exam even shows up. So that's how far away we are at those types of things. This is way too early to worry about retirement dates, when the series goes away. We're not even close. If you're working on your A+ exam, you're doing exactly the right thing right now. Work towards earning that certification and getting it in your pocket. That's an important part of this. So, here's a good one. This is one. Well, that's all the questions. Let's get the one specific question from Chris, who asks, hey, did you ever think about expanding to more social medias like Instagram or TikTok with the kids to increase your audience? Well, TikTok, probably not. You probably won't see much TikToking from Professor Messer. Not really the place we tend to hang out. And there are a number of security issues associated with TikTok that I'm still not completely happy with, but even if there wasn't those security issues with TikTok, it's not really the platform that kind of fits where I would like to be. However, we have an Instagram, and we've been posting to Instagram for quite a while. In fact, I should bring up, let's look at, if I have to pop open a browser where I'm already in the Instagram And if I look at my Instagram, I'm going to have to switch my account. We have to re-log in. We go to this one. We click the button. We save it. And we'll see if Facebook likes me. Do not save my login info. And if we were looking at Instagram, I tend to put our daily pop quiz questions up on the Instagram. Let me see if I can bring this over and we can look at it. So if we were to go to my Instagram, you will find, here it is. Here's one of the Instagrams that I have. And you can see that this one shows an 1102 A+ pop quiz. How timely, since we're on our 1102 exam. It shows an IPS log, shows web traffic containing the string or 1 equals 1, which of the following attacks was blocked by the IPS, is that a SQL injection, cross-site scripting, insider threat, denial of service, and brute force. Now, this is a carousel, as they say in the world of Instagram. So you can move through the carousel. If you're on your mobile device, just swipe, and you can see the answer is indeed SQL injection. And I have an explanation that tells you that a SQL injection attack adds SQL commands to valid network connections in an effort to access a database. And since it's Instagram and we put a pretty picture with our question of the day, we also give you a full shot of that picture. In this case, it is the background shows Atlanta, Georgia. So we got quite a following there on the Instagram. How many do we have? Is there a way for me to tell how many are here? So right now, we're not bad on the Instagram side of things. We've made 1,800 posts. We got 31,000 followers. It's not something I really emphasize. Really, I only tell people during the live streams. There is a link on the website. You can always join any of our social media sites by going to professormesser.com, and up in the, I guess I should actually show you, since we are here on this medium that allows you to see the website. Up here in the upper right are these little icons. So there you can go to our YouTube, our X or Twitter, our Instagram, our LinkedIn, our Facebook, and our Discord. They're all quick and easy and available for you right there on professormesser.com. That's where I would recommend you go to for all of your social media needs. So hopefully, although sadly, I appreciate the idea of TikTok, and I think that was an excellent suggestion, Chris. Unfortunately, you're not going to be seeing me doing the TikTok-y thing. The last thing anybody wants to see is me lip syncing to some song and dancing around. Although I recognize there are actually, I've seen some very good educational TikTok channels there, but that's not really the place we go and what we want to do. So I appreciate the thought and the idea, but currently I think Instagram's a better choice. And you can find us, of course, Facebook is a big one for us. We've got plenty of questions every day on Instagram. You've got LinkedIn. We also have those questions available on LinkedIn and on X. So we can always add to that. If you have a different site that you think might be good, I'd be glad to have a look at that. Let's keep going through this list. There's plenty to go through. We got questions that you have been submitting, and we have plenty of time here. Here's one. This does come up every once in a while. I mentioned you can ask anything you'd like. Cam asks, hey, what kind of keyboard and mouse do you have? What the heck? In fact, you probably have seen, if you've been looking at our live stream, you may have seen that the keyboard and mouse is not the traditional kind of keyboard and mouse. This is a split keyboard, and it is one from Logitech. I don't remember the exact model number. We'll have to bring this up and see what the exact model is every time I answer the model number. And they write it in really small little letters on the back that you can't see in a lighting that I have here. You also notice the mouse is just ridiculous. It is this enormous mouse. Let's have a look, see if I can show you from the main screen here. It'd be a little bit more telling than that long view. So here's the Logitech keyboard. Have I used the keyboard a lot? You can see, look at these keys. Which keys am I using the most? Hard to tell. Hard to see which ones have actually, some of these you can't even see anymore. They don't have any letters on them. Notice the M and the N no longer exist. They're just these black keys that are on my keyboard. That is it. I love this keyboard though. This Logitech keyboard. I used Microsoft. I use primarily split keyboards just because they're so comfortable, and I'm sitting here in this chair for quite some time. So it helps my arms and fingers if I can have something that's a little more ergonomic. So I'm very big into ergonomic mice and ergonomic keyboards. However, if you've ever done anything with ergonomics or looked at the options for ergonomics that are out there, there's not a lot of great options. A lot of this I think I've tried every ergonomic keyboard and every ergonomic mouse you can think of, or practically all of the ones that look reasonable anyway. And unfortunately, there's just not a lot of great mice or keyboards. The keyboard that I'm using is a wireless keyboard from Logitech. It is their Ergo K860. This is the front end software that's used on the K860, where you can remap different options that are available here. For example, on this keyboard, this is a very good example of how ergonomic keyboards don't always get it right. And although I love this keyboard, and it's probably the fourth or fifth one I have purchased, because I just go through keyboards probably once a year, it seems, even though there are a lot of great features on here, you'll notice that right above the backspace key is the print screen key. Now, I'm in Mac OS, and when you hit the print screen option in Mac OS, it immediately saves every screen to your download directory. And I have two screens on here that I use primarily, so two files get written every time you hit the print screen button. It's so close to the backspace button that it's easy. Every time you backspace, I kept hitting the print screen key. This was a problem when I first got this keyboard, because there was no way to disable that. Well, now the print screen key has an option. All the keys that have the white text around, you can modify what they do. So the print screen key I modified to do nothing. So this was the best feature of my keyboard, is a feature that turns it off. That was just how it worked out. So that's why this keyboard, at that point, this keyboard became 100% the best ergonomic keyboard I'd used. I like the feel of it. I like it a little better than the Microsoft keyboards, which started off to be really good, but they lost a little bit of their touch ability. The way and the feedback you get, the tactile response of the keyboard on the Microsoft side has suffered through the years. The Logitech keyboard has not suffered. It is a very smooth like butter. It is not the fancy red or brown keyboard containers for each of the keys that are here. These are very soft keys to use, and they tend to fit my style of keyboarding a lot better than what you would find in the Microsoft or even the gaming keyboards, which I love a good gaming keyboard, but not for what I'm doing all day, every day as I'm writing content. The other options that you have the other thing you asked about was the mouse. Let me bring up the chat here so you can see this. The mouse is big. Let me bring it up on the screen so you can see it here. This is the mouse. Let me unplug it so you can really see it. It's the size of my head. In fact, it looks like my head if you're looking at it. This is a big mouse. It is a supersized mouse. My whole hand. This is how it fits. You can't even see my hand. But notice the hand, you play baseball with this. It's just huge. This is called a hand shoe mouse. Hand shoe mouse is what this is called. It is designed by the Hippus company in the Netherlands. And it is a great mouse. Now, if you're a gamer, this is the worst mouse ever, because it is so big, you can't move quickly across the screen. But they have both a wired version, which is what I am using, and they have a new wireless version that is ambidextrous. As you can see, this was designed for a right hand. You can't use this on a left hand. So if you're left-handed, you have to buy the left-handed version of this. They have a new version of this that is one that can switch between left-handed and right-handed, which is kind of nice, and has the option to be wireless, I think both with their dongle and through Bluetooth. Maybe it's just Bluetooth now that I'm thinking about it. But that is another good example of a mouse and a keyboard combination that works very well for me. And I just love the Hippus hand shoe mouse because of that. My challenge is that the little tiny mice, I don't have a mouse usually I have one on the desk that I'm using for other things, but my hand is so big that I end up being a claw. It's the claw. And at the end of the day, you're now like this, and you're your pinky has now been rubbing against the table so much that it's left a track and it's numb and it's dirty. So those little tiny mice don't work for me. I have to have a larger one, and it works really well. And I really love this mouse. This is probably the second or third handshoe mouse that I've had as well. So if you want to know more about what we're doing and what we're using in the studio, I have this documented. You can go to professormesser.com/studio or use the studio link from the main page of the website. My microphone is in here, the camera. What's interesting, though, is I'm working on replacing the camera over the next couple of months, replacing the video switcher. In fact, I already have the new video switcher sitting in here. That's going to be swapped out at the end of the month. And I've just bought a new mixer. So all of this equipment that I have been using for years in the studio, I am planning to swap out. Will it get swapped out? Stay tuned. But if it does, I will update this so that you know what we're using. And this is where I have details in here about the mice and the keyboard. There's the Logitech keyboard. There's the mouse that I'm using. So if you ever wanted to later on go back and have a look at it, what lights are you using? What type of camera do you have set up? What are you doing in here? What are you using? That can give you a feel there. So a good way that you can kind of reference that. And if you have questions about it, just let me know. Send me a note. A lot of people will do that and be able to work through it. Let's keep going through the questions that you have submitted. We have others here that we could do. I have a lot. This is one that's kind of up my alley since this is where I spent a lot of my career. So a question from Drew. Drew asks, I'm a former salesperson. First, Drew, very good that you're able to say it out loud to other people. We will accept you. There's no judgment here. I'm a former salesperson trying to possibly move into a sales engineer role. Would the CompTIA certs be a good way to show that I can learn to sell specific software? I think if you were to look at most organizations and systems engineers for those organizations, and I'm speaking as a former systems engineer for really most of my career. Started as a field service technician, became an internal desktop administration engineer, network administration, and server administration engineer at an insurance company. From there, started working for Network General as a SE. We call them systems engineers, but indeed they are pre-sales engineering roles. Obviously was acquired by McAfee. You just heard that story. Worked for them for a number of years. Got divested back to Network General. As soon as we got divested back to Network General, to continue that story, we were purchased by NetScout. NetScout is a network management company based out of Boston, the Boston area. And we became that company. And so the sniffer products and all of the products that you may have heard of back in the day from Network General are now owned by NetScout. And I left NetScout soon after that acquisition and got a job as a systems engineer at some no-name startup that no one in the world had ever heard of, including myself, called Palo Alto Networks, that now obviously is a behemoth in the industry. And that was an absolutely fun, exciting time in my career because I was able to get in very early before anyone had even heard of what a next generation firewall was. We had to spend the first year of that job just explaining to people what a next generation firewall did, and then have them in the meeting look at me and say, I don't believe you, what you're telling us. That nothing does what you're saying that does. So imagine having that power in your hands and saying, why don't we look at it? And then showing that it did all of this crazy stuff. You can now understand why Palo Alto Networks is really ruling the world of firewalls right now, because they were very early on. They effectively invented that technology. Not effectively, they did. They are the ones that came up with the concept of next generation firewalls. They're the ones that do it better than anyone else, and you can tell why. They were very, very early on in the idea of changing the world of security, and they did it with that. So this came up often. And in fact, in my career, I often thought, maybe I should not be a systems engineer. Maybe I should be a salesperson. So I've kind of done this, but from a different perspective. As it turns out, that didn't work out. And I think that was probably for the best. I think we can all agree for me. Not saying that being a salesperson is wrong, because as a systems engineer, you're often paired with a salesperson, but it's a different world. Obviously, salespeople have the bulk of the pressure because salespeople are effectively paid primarily on commission. There's a small base amount of money you can make every paycheck, but most of your money that you would make in sales comes from selling. If you don't sell product, you don't get paid. It's a very simple equation. The systems engineers are paid a lot differently. In the world of sales or sales engineers are usually paid somewhere around about an 80-20, where 80% of your salary is base, and then 20% are commissions and bonuses. Often, if you're really good, you're making much more than 20% off the top. Usually when you hit your 100% goal for the year, which would be your total amount of sales for the year or for the quarter, usually there are often multipliers associated with that, which means you make even more money for everything you sell after that point. That's just sales. That's the way it works. But the great thing about it being a systems engineer is you get to know everything technically about those technologies. So when I worked for Network General, I knew everything that I needed to know and everything there was to know about the sniffer products. Imagine being that expert in that field for that particular product. That's a very specific niche, I realize, but if it is a product that everyone uses, that positions you and creates a very nice foundation of knowledge that you can then use to propel yourself anywhere else. And I think that's really what got me the job at Palo Alto Networks, is because they saw the foundation that I had in networking and the foundation I had in protocols, which effectively was the foundation of how next generation firewalls work. So it was a nice building block to put on top of that. Now, at the time, I had also published a book on Nmap. There were other things I was doing in the world of security, and I had a lot of security knowledge in firewalls, intrusion prevention, content filtering, IPsec tunnels, and other things that I'd gotten on the McAfee side, because McAfee ended up purchasing PGP, purchasing the Gauntlet firewall. They purchased additional networking security features. They created stream to disk for protocols. There was a lot of great things that came from that particular marriage. And it taught me a lot about the world of security. To this specific question that Drew asked, would CompTIA certs be a way to help prove that you could sell or work with certain software? And it could, if there is a link there. So I guess a real good question would be, if you were interested in getting into systems engineering for that particular company, go talk to the SE managers. You probably already know who they are, and say, what do you look for when you hire an engineer? What things are important for us as a company? Are you looking for certain certifications? Are you looking for a certain foundation of experience? Are you looking for a certain niche knowledge? Do they need to be Microsoft certified? Do they need to have knowledge in networking? Do they need to have a certain focus on our particular software? What do you want? And then find out what they're looking for. Then you'd have a checklist. Then you would know, oh, we like people that have spent a lot of time in their home labs building their own equipment. Maybe you have someone that's very familiar in cloud-based technologies, very familiar with virtualization, it just depends on the software that you're selling and the technology that you're representing. And as a systems engineer, you have to be very, 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 very familiar with your software. You will not know everything about everything with the software, but you'll know more than 99% of the people that are out there. I think probably every meeting I went to with Palo Alto Networks, there's always some question you get that you've never heard before or you don't know the answer. That's perfectly normal. I think we have this idea in our minds that people in technology are experts about everything with that technology. That is far, far, far from the truth. The technology world is enormous. Let's just take next generation firewalls. A next generation firewall at its base, of course, is a firewall. It allows you to allow or deny traffic flows through a particular device. And we can do that based on port numbers. If it's the next gen firewall, we can do it based on an application or the way an application works. For example, if you wanted to allow someone to visit a social media site, but not post anything to that social media site, you can do that with the next generation firewall. It not only understands the applications, but it understands functions of that application, and you can set security policies on those functions. It also integrates with your Active Directory infrastructure, for example. So here's a firewall made by Palo Alto Networks that talks to a Microsoft network. And you can set firewall rules that say, if you are in the executive group, you can do this. If you are in the shipping and receiving group, you can do this. If you are in the marketing group, completely different set of security policies, all based on the rules that are built on those groups. And so you have to integrate with Active Directory to know, well, who's in that group, so that you can then apply those policies to those people. So there's already a need now to know the networking side of things and to know the Microsoft side of things. Then on top of that is the whole security world that you have to deal with, understanding intrusion prevention and the strategies and things associated with that, understanding cloud-based malware detection, understanding management and functionality of multiple systems that can be used either in a load balancing situation as active-active or one that might be active standby, so you have some redundancy. Maybe it's going into an enterprise, so it's not just a standalone unit. Maybe it is a chassis-based system where you're sliding cards in as you need functionality, especially for very large and very large-scale high-speed networks. Those are all different things you need to know from different parts of the world of technology. There's no way you're going to know everything. So often people ask a question that's very specific that says, in your implementation of OSPF, when you're configuring this next-gen firewall as a layer 3 device, does this OSPF functionality include the ability to do load balancing, which is built into the OSPF spec, but does not necessarily mean that the OSPF implementation on that device supports that. So that's a good question. Let me find out, because I've never implemented OSPF in that type of load balancing configuration. You go back, there's plenty of people in the organization that can help you. You talk to them, they're going to tell you, here's what you can do in that scenario and the answer, and then you can take that back. But you're often going to be sitting in a room with a customer, and one of the best things you can tell them at that point is, that's a good question. I have no idea. I've never implemented that before, but I know someone who has. Let me get with them and I can get back with you later today with that answer. And that's what your job is as a systems engineer, is to first find out what's important to them, be able to present a solution that solves the problems that they're having, and then actually prove it does it. That's the hardest part, of course, is plugging in an evaluation unit and showing someone that happens. But that's a process, and it's a sales funnel. If you ever get into these organizations where you're doing that, you're now not only an expert with technology, but you also need to understand how to present these solutions that would actually help people, because they're having a problem. That's why you're sitting there. They're willing to pay you to fix this issue. Can you really fix it? That's a tough question to answer. Let's see if it does. I think it does. Let's put it to its paces. We'll plug it in. We'll run an eval. We'll step through all 5 of the things you say you needed to do. Look, it does number 1. It does number 2. It does number 3. It does number 4. And yes, it does number 5. How many of these would you like? That's your job. But to be able to answer those 5 questions, you need to be really, really, really well-versed in the intricacies of that device and be able to present it as someone who is an expert in that device, so they understand that the people representing this product are knowledgeable with these technologies, so that you can do that. I know that was a very long, very detailed explanation, but it is something that is indeed very close to my heart, because I did it for so many years in this industry, and I loved being an SE. My particular role was one where I traveled quite a bit. So got on a plane on Monday. I traveled place to place to place. You're staying in a hotel every night. I was that road warrior kind of person. And in some cases, the job expanded out not just to be a regional position, but an international position. So then you're flying to different countries. You're dealing with the challenges associated with that as someone who only speaks English. That's me. And some people, I'll tell them, here's what I do. And they go, oh, that must be awful. I say, yes, it is. You don't want to do it, because I'm thinking to myself, this job's great. I don't need more competition. This is fantastic. This is really what I wanted to get across is there are jobs out there in technology for everyone. And whether it's you going to the same office every day, and there's some great advantages of that. There's also great advantages of flying around the world, meeting people every day, talking about technology all day. And systems engineers, here's something they don't often tell you, is we work during the office hours. We are meeting with you during the time that you're in the office. And when you're done for the day, we're done for the day. So I don't have on-call hours. I don't have things I have to do on the holidays. I'm not having to work on the weekends, generally speaking. So I don't have to maintain my own network. I just have to talk to you when you're available in the office. So there are some nice advantages, even though there's a lot of travel, even though there's a big emphasis on making sure that you stay up to date with your customers. Communication is important. Being able to get information to someone in a timely manner is important because your salesperson that is partnered with you has to close this deal. They have a quota. They don't get paid unless you finish your job as an engineer. So the better engineer you are, the smoother this entire process will be, not just for people inside your company, but also the customers that you are ultimately providing a solution for. We often dismiss the whole process. Oh, it's the salespeople are calling us. Oh, it's the salespeople are bugging me again. It's a necessary evil if you want to look at it that way. But whenever I would work with people, I'd go in the door, we'd chat, we had the best time. I think technologists like technologists. I think we like hanging out and talking tech. And it's a lot of fun when you have a neat product to be able to demonstrate and show, like, you're not going to believe this. Let's plug it in. You're going to love this. And indeed, on many networks, plugging in a next generation firewall will show you things that maybe you don't want to see. Like you've got to have some type of eye bleach sometimes to be able to solve the issue of what you see on other people's networks. And I've seen quite a bit. Oh, the stories. That's for another time. Hopefully that's given you some idea of where you might be able to lead yourself, Drew, and what people are asking for. But go talk to the SE managers. They will be glad to tell you. And you can tell them, is this something that's legit? You think I could do this? Will you hire a salesperson to be an SE? Some organizations won't. I worked for an organization that would not hire an SE to be a salesperson because I actually poked my head down that particular path and said, is that something you didn't know? Okay, got it. Thanks. No, sorry I asked. Let's just keep doing this. Turns out they were right. You're very smart with tech. Go do the tech thing. You'll be fine with that. And they were right. Let's keep going through this list of things. We have a number of questions that you have submitted. Thank you again for sending these in. I'm past the top of the hour. I realize that, but you're more than welcome to throw a couple more questions in there. That's probably not going down. Now that I'm looking at my list of things, maybe that's not the best suggestion at this particular point. We have a lot of questions that we could potentially go through here. Let's go through this next list that we have. More questions that are over this list. I mentioned this sort of at the end of our study group, but I think it's worth mentioning again. This is from Emily, who says, hello, as someone with no tech experience and in school for cybersecurity, I feel like I'm struggling to retain all this info. I think everybody struggles to retain this info. Emily's question is, what are your best study tips? Thanks. There are a couple things I would recommend you focus on. I always mention there are 4 things you really need for the best possible study experience. You may not personally need all 4 of these, but I think all 4 of them can give you something that really creates a bit of synergy because there are differences between all 4 of these different elements. The first one is find a good video series. Maybe I'm a little bit biased. I think there's a good one you could watch on our site, but not everybody is in love with the style or the type of training that every single trainer does. So find the video series that fits for you. And I mention this because being able to see someone demonstrate these functions on the screen give you some perspective as to how you could do it. So I think there's an important learning process there. Also, having someone explain it in a different way, I think helps. Also, get a good book. That's the second element. Books can give you more information in a much more denser format. You can obviously read through much more content than you would be able to get in the same amount of time watching a video. Just because reading a book and watching a video are different media. Of course, it's going to be a little bit longer in a video format, but I also think a good video format is not simply going to duplicate what you can read in a book. That's really the philosophy we have when we create our training courses. If I wanted to just read a book, I'd read a book. Why would I read a book on a video? Just to give you a perspective of where that comes from. The third one is hands-on, doing some labs, trying it yourself. There's something about the muscle memory when you're typing in the ping command, you're typing in the traceroute command, you're typing in the Windows setup, and you're watching this go through and you're clicking things on the screen. You're firing off some synapses in your brain that I think are locking in that experience that you can then pull back from when you take the exam. So there is something about doing it yourself that is closing that circle. And so you're building on the knowledge you've created when you watch the videos and read the book. Now you're actually applying some of that knowledge. And then lastly, get as much Q&A as you can. Go through practice exams. Get a really good practice exams book and go through the questions and understand why you got the question right or why you got the question wrong. That will be kind of the last test for you to see if you've really retained that information. So I think all four of those are very good ways to approach the process of learning. Now, if you really wanted to see how well did you do with all of that after you've gone through all four of these, do you really know it? As I mentioned earlier, one of the very best checklists that you can get is the exam objectives. This checklist is free and it tells you everything you need to know. So go through the list. Identify basic features of Microsoft Windows editions. For Windows 10, because we are working here with the 220.11.01, we need to know what the Home, Pro, Pro for Workstations, and Enterprise versions are. Then we need to know the feature differences. You need to be able to go through each of those bullets, and if you can explain that bullet to yourself or someone else, you can check it off the list. If you cannot explain it to yourself or to someone else, maybe that goes on your list. Maybe you highlight that one. Maybe I need to come back to that. Maybe everything that you know really well, you could say, yep, I got that one. We can check it off our list. That one's green. Next one, availability of RDP. Yep, I'm familiar with that. The next one on the list, I'm going to choose a different color. Random access memory support limitations. I don't remember that one off the top of my list. I really need to come back to that one. So you can work through kind of a highlighting of these so that at the end of this, hopefully everything is green or you've got a check mark next to all of them. And maybe if you don't know something, you circle it or you mark it with a color, you come back later and then use that as the additional topics you need to study. So that will help you understand if you're really ready to sit for this exam, because you'll be able to visually see, do I know this material or do I not know this material? And sometimes that's all you really need is somebody helping point you in a direction with the material itself, especially when you look at there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of topics on this exam, on each of these exams. That's a lot of material you have to learn. So have a look at the exam objectives, use those four elements in your studies, use as many of them as you feel is necessary for you. I think you'll be fine being able to break down all of these different topics. Remember, there's no time frame here. You're not under the gun to get all of this done in the next week or the next 2 weeks or the next 3 weeks. You have months now that you could spend studying this. Bite a little bit off, see how much you can chew, bite a little bit more, and just work through it at your own pace. Some people get through this material in a matter of weeks. People like me tend to take a number of months. So it's really up to you in the way that you study. Let's get one more into this mix. There's so many good questions here. Some of these are going to be good to wait until later in the year when the new version is coming out. Some of you are asking about changes or differences. We're way ahead of our schedule on that one. There's no need to even break that down yet. However, I know the answer And the answer, if you're waiting for a new version, there's not much that's going to be new in the new version. There's a number of reasons for that, but the newer version of the A+ exam will show up sometime in 2025. They've already released a pre-release version of the exam objectives. You can download them from CompTIA website and look yourself if you would like. I think you'll find that there's not much difference. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Interestingly enough, the biggest reason for the lack of difference between the current A+ exam version and the next set of questions that you get in the question pool really are based around COVID. Not much change. The Windows that was released 3 years ago with the 11.01, 11.02, Windows 10 and Windows 11. Well, what do we have now? We have Windows 11. That's it. Windows did not change. For the first time in forever, as they say, this exam that we are about to update doesn't have an updated operating system in it. We don't have to learn a new OS for the new version of the exam. That was a big change with every exam version. For the first time now, since I've been doing these, and I think this will be the 7th or 8th iteration of these exams that I've created in this training course that I've created, I don't have to put a new operating system in it. That's crazy. But that's just something that Microsoft did. That may be the last time that happens. Even Microsoft realized, wait, that may not be a good idea for us. Maybe we should do Windows 12. So that's the challenge, of course, is eventually this will change. We should enjoy this while we can. And so I'd recommend you have a look at those objectives that really interest you. But I got to tell you, it's not a factor at this point. It's from a time perspective. And ultimately, you're going to look at those differences between the two and you're going to say, did anything change? Very little, relatively speaking, very, very little from that perspective. Okay, let's see if I can fit one more in here on a Friday afternoon as we are going through this detail. We've got plenty to go through with the questions that you have sent. Thank you for doing that. This is a pretty good one because a lot of people want to be able to do this. I mentioned one of the things that might be useful during your studies is to get as much hands-on as possible. Rachel asks, I want to build a home lab to get more hands-on experience with networking equipment and computer hardware. Great idea. What kinds of risks are associated with buying secondhand? Should that be fine? Well, there's a couple things to consider here. First, from a IT certification perspective, at least an entry-level cert for A+, Network+, Security+, or even the Cisco Certified Network Administrator, the CCNA, I don't think you need physical product. I don't think you need a physical operating system. I don't think you need physical switches. I don't think you need physical routers. I don't think it's necessary to learn what you need to learn. And in fact, when you get into the world of network administration, network management, or even PC and server administration, you're rarely touching physical equipment anyway. The servers, the routers, the switches are in a data center somewhere. And in large organizations, you as the network person can't even get into the data center to touch the equipment. You have to tell someone else what to do if anything needs to be changed. You have to go through a change control process to do that. So I would say basically, at least starting off, do as much as you can in a virtual machine. So if you're running Windows, Linux, it's tough to run Mac OS in a VM. It's not allowed in Mac OS unless you already have Apple hardware, which sort of defeats the purpose. That doesn't quite fit. But if you have VMs, you can do 99% of what you need to do. In fact, if you looked at my video on Active Directory, that's part of my Core 1 exam series, I have an Active Directory server. I have multiple machines that are connecting to the Active Directory domain. All of those are in VMs. Nothing is a physical product. And so you can also load up virtual machines with firewalls, with intrusion prevention, with other server operating systems, with web servers, with database servers, and it just goes on. You can do practically everything in a VM. If you're doing more networking and you want to learn more about the Cisco side of things, Cisco makes free virtual worlds that you could build out for networking with Cisco equipment. That is the Cisco Packet Tracer. look for Cisco Packet Tracer. It's free from Cisco. It's sort of free. You have to register with Cisco to be able to download this, but it doesn't cost any money. They don't charge you for this other than giving up your name and your email address. There's a login you have to do. There's authentication to be able to use this, and you have to register to be able to earn that certificate, to earn that authentication front end. The idea there is you can build out an entire network infrastructure with dynamic routing protocols, switches, routers, network address translation, in stations, be able to ping between them, freeze time, capture packets. It's all in Packet Tracer. In fact, I would argue Packet Tracer provides you with more functionality than a physical switch or router could ever provide you, because you can now control it at a software level, and it gives you the same feel, the same look, the same command line function that you would get with an actual switch or actual router. Now, I get the idea of wanting physical equipment because there is something about the tactile, taking a network cable and plugging into a connector. But when you look at a switch or you look at a router, it's a box that you provide power that has a bunch of RJ45 ports on it. That's it. That's all you're getting. If you just want to plug in and unplug RJ45 ports, you can really do that with anything. So I don't think it's entirely necessary always to get third-party networking equipment or third-party hardware. But if you're trying to learn things for your A+ exam, being able to break apart a real computer and be able to touch the components inside and be able to take apart a motherboard can be a valuable learning experience. So I don't think purchasing second type of software, secondhand software, previously owned hardware, and getting hardware from somewhere else is generally not very risky. And if you are concerned about the risk of something, because if you buy an older PC, you have no idea what's on that drive. And if you're concerned about malware or something malicious being on that system, you could easily just remove the drive completely or really do a format of the drive and you'd be fine. Not an issue with that. But you certainly don't want to get a piece of hardware, somebody's previously used computer that's already got Windows on it. We'll just boot up that Windows and run it. That would be a bad idea. Having a way to do a factory reset, or even better, install your own version of an operating system on that computer, much better idea. That protects you much better and prevents any type of concerns that you might have when receiving hardware from someone else. Switches and routers don't tend to be a problem because that is original equipment that was from that manufacturer that runs their version of firmware. Someone can't generally put their own version of firmware on that device. That's not always the case. You can certainly look up some cases of additional firmware being installed on people's home routers. That has been a problem in the past, but that is a good example of using hardware and being able to work through it. And these days, if you're using the latest hardware, people are in the chat room are talking about, but it could have a rootkit and then you can't get rid of the rootkit. Well, you've got the latest version of BIOS, the UEFI BIOS, and using a secure boot gets rid of any of those issues. So you don't have any problems. Notice you don't really hear any more of rootkits in the world of security. That's because we built technologies to prevent those. We don't tend to see those bounce around much anymore. But always you should use the proper, that's why I say maybe just grab the whole storage drive, throw it out and put your own storage drive in there. That's a relatively inexpensive switch if you want to do something like that. Always a good idea. And I think that's getting any type of hands-on or any type of additional knowledge on using those technologies or that software. Always a good idea, something you should certainly consider for your studies. And you can combine that with videos, with your book, with other labs that you might get, and ultimately prepare you to take your test exams, your practice exams, and ultimately take the final exam for this. I think all of those are good ideas. Hopefully that gives you some place you can go with setting these up. There's a lot that you can work through. There's a lot of great home lab ideas on YouTube and in blogs. You should definitely search around the internet for what people are doing for home labs. And if you're curious to know what people are doing for their A+, Network Plus, or Security Plus, head over to our Discord. There's plenty of people there that can tell you what they're doing for some of their home labs too. I give some suggestions in some videos that I have. There's a video that's on the YouTube video description of this video of how to get a job in IT with no experience. And one of those ways is to have a well-established and well-used home lab. And I give you some examples of home lab things you can do to be able to not only learn more about the technologies, but have stories that you can tell when ultimately you end up getting that interview. They're going to want to tell you, they're going to want to hear some stories from you. You better have some stories. One of the best ways to get stories is in your home lab. The things you will find when you start plugging in a firewall, intrusion prevention, loading up a Linux server, installing your own database server. You're going to stumble through it. You're going to create problems. You're going to mess things up, and then you're going to fix those things. And there's your stories. That's what you bring to the table when you're trying to explain to somebody what you know and what you've done and what your experiences have brought to them, because that is an important thing when you're sitting in front of a prospective employer. They want to know that you've had some experience in the field working with these technologies. That would be a really good way to do it. Make sure you have those stories. I think that brings us to the end of a good 2 hours of our study group. Thanks for hanging in there for the extra time that we had there. Thank you for joining us in our first hour of Q&A. We always love doing the live stream. We have 2 more of these next week. If you want to join us on Tuesday and Thursday of next week, we have our Network Plus study group and our Security Plus study group. If you're studying for those exams, those would be fun to sit in as well. I'll have questions for you in the first hour. And of course, as always, you can ask questions of me in the second hour. Again, this is our last Core 2 study group for the year. Thank you so much for a fantastic 2024. And we look forward to doing so many more of these in the new year and having you along here with us. Thanks for joining us. We will see you next time on the A+ study group. Thanks, everybody.